What were you taught in school that you later learned was completely untrue? All of chemistry, about 3 times. Electrons are little balls that circle around the nucleus. Just kidding. Electrons move in these little clouds around a nucleus. Just kidding. Electrons move in these different hybrid clouds. Just kidding. Electrons are clouds. Just kidding. Frick you. Also, light only moves in straight lines, except when it doesn't. Our gym teacher told us your body temperature increases by 40 degrees when you run. When we pointed out you'd go to the hospital a fever over 103, she told us it was different, and to stop acting smug. The sun is half star, half planet. I had a middle school teacher who told us that Buddhists have to pray to Buddha 3 times a day. Took me till high school before I realized he was probably thinking about Muslims. Muslims pray to Mecca 5 times a day, so he even got that part wrong. You can't take a bigger number away from a smaller number. In Of Mice and Men, Curly wore a leather glove filled with Vaseline. Our teacher told us it was so he could beat his wife with a softer hand. She was too embarrassed to tell us it was for intercourse. Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity by flying a kite with a key on it. No, he didn't discover it. He invented it. The phenomenon of electrons moving around never happened until he flew that kite. People would offer me free drugs. In 7th grade health class we were learning about cancer. My teacher explained to the class that cancer can only be located in major organs. A few seconds after he said that, I raised my hand and said my grandpa had surgery to get cancer in his knee removed. A knee isn't a major organ, is it? And this teacher thought for a minute and realized he was completely wrong and just responded with saying, I'm not sure, let's move on. Oh crap, the knee is a major organ. We're screwed. Cracking your knuckles will give you arthritis. I was doing it regardless of that myth. It's not like I didn't believe it, but sometimes you just have to crack your dang knuckles because your hand has a cramp or something. Very relieved to find out it was a myth. Men and women have a different number of ribs. Also some stuff about the Antichrist, but I didn't believe that. Till men and women have the same number of ribs. That everyone believed the world was flat up until Columbus proved them wrong. Additionally, that Columbus went to his grave not knowing that he hadn't landed in the West Indies. If I recall correctly, there is a diary entry written by him acknowledging that what he had landed in was a new continent. Everything about chemistry. In grade 9 we were introduced to chemistry. Then in the later grades they were like everything you were taught was essentially wrong. We did it to simplify things. Here's how it actually is. Then in university they go lol, everything you were taught in high school was wrong. It's actually like this. Looking back, I wasn't bad at chemistry. I always did well. But because of this constant flip-flopping I'm still confused about some of the basics. For example, acids. That you have to round up all the numbers after the decimal point. Example 1.07883666272. Round the 0 to a 1, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, etc. That slaves were paid, just not very much, and they were given a choice between a penny and a dime, but chose the penny because it was bigger, as if that was somehow less racist. What the frick? It's illegal to sell yours at yard sales. You only use 10% of your brain. Fricking liars. My biology teacher told us that, saying that if we use 100%, we'll have wings and other superpowers. That the ancient Romans has places called vomitoriums where they would go and gorge themselves on food and then vomit to make room for more. Gross, right? Kind of like that one scene in Catching Fire. Vomitoriums were actually a sort of hallway designed for spectators to exit the Colosseum and other arenas as efficiently as possible. Fun fact, vomit, and thus vomitorium, basically means to spew forth. When you puke, you spew forth old food. A vomitorium would be something that spew forth people into a stadium. That there wasn't any air combat during World War I, because the planes were only used for scouting. What about Red Baron? That I wouldn't be paid to stare out the window all day. I'm a pilot. George Washington cut down a cherry tree. Also not exactly untrue, but I have no idea why we needed to practice recorders. I think recorders are probably the simplest, cheapest wind instrument, and teaching music is healthy, exercising a kid's brain in a different artistic way. Usually this is taught in 4th or 5th grade, so by middle school they can choose a complicated specialized instrument and join band or orchestra. The food pyramid. Eat your carbs, kids. My 7th grade health teacher. Black people can't swim. Their bones are much denser than ours. I've seen black kids jump into the pool. They just sink like rocks. Imagine my surprise upon moving away from Union. You will need to write in cursive for the rest of your life, 3rd and 4th grade teachers. Blood is blue when it is inside your body. While silly Americans spent millions building a zero-gravity pen that could write in space, the Russians used pencils. Actually, NASA programs previously used pencils, but because of the substantial dangers that broken pencil tips and graphite dust pose to electronics in zero gravity, the flammable nature of wood present in pencils, and the inadequate quality documentation produced by non-permanent or smeared record keeping, a better solution was needed. Russian cosmonauts used pencils and grease pencils on plastic slates until also adopting a space pen in 1969 with a purchase of 100 units for use on all future missions. NASA never approached Paul Fisher, the inventor, to develop a pen, nor did Fisher receive any government funding for the pen's development. Fisher invented it independently and then, in 1965, asked NASA to try it. After extensive testing, NASA decided to use the pens in future Apollo missions. There are different sections of the tongue for salty, sweet, sour, and bitter taste buds. I remember testing this myself once. I took some piece of candy and stuck it on the sweet zone, then on some other zone, and thought it tasted exactly the same. Even as a kid I wasn't sure about the legitimacy of that claim. Because teachers convinced us you couldn't begin a sentence with because, I believed it true. And then they told you not to start a sentence with a conjunction, and that heck would make special room for you should you decide a preposition would be a good word to end on. Back in 7th grade health class, my female teacher, and mother of 3, told us that girls cannot have an orgasm. Looking back, I honestly feel bad for the woman. How can you go through life and have 3 children of your own without ever knowing that you could have an orgasm? 1. Future employers will see how many detentions you have had during school. 2. There are 52 states in the USA. This was a mistake in a textbook, so this was taught to a whole generation of Austrians, probably also Germans. 3. In a geography class, a student asked why the north of Ireland was part of the UK. The professor replied, because Ireland gave it to the British. Coming from a very patriotic Irish family, this was a shock to say the least. 4. High school teachers told me how professors in college university don't help you with anything and you're completely on your own. After explaining difficulty I had with one of my papers to my professor, he gave me the names of about 5-6 authors he knows right on the subject and essentially gave me half my research. Another time, a professor actually loaned me a copy of a book the library was out of so I could photocopy a chapter I needed for my final paper. Most of my professors would answer questions over email or after class too. Professors help more than high school teachers in most cases. North is up, south is down, east is to your left, and west if to your right. My world cultures teacher wasn't the best. Time for my vowel story. I've told this before on Reddit, but it needs retelling. In kindergarten, my teacher read us out all the vowels because, somehow, that's considered an important thing for children to know. She read them as such: A, E, I, O, U, sometimes W, and sometimes Y. I bet you can guess which one of those fricked up the rest of my entire life. I understood these vowels to be the complete and immutable list of vowels from then on. Why would I not? My teacher told me that's what they are, so that's what they were. This lasted about a year. In 1st grade, my teacher asked the class, can anyone tell me which letters are vowels, because, again, it is somehow important to adults that children know this weird, esoteric pseudo fact. I shot my hand up with zeal and shout, I do. They're A, E, I, O, U, sometimes W, and sometimes Y. My teacher giggled a bit and said, haha, well no half-head. W isn't one of them, but Mrs. Kindergarten said it was. Mrs. First grade. Here, take this to Mrs. Kindergarten. She handed me a note that said is W a vowel, Mrs. First grade. I walked over to my kindergarten teacher, gave her the note, watched her write something on it, and brought it back to my first grade teacher. She was absolutely livid. I got detention for a week. It turned out that the note just said yes and that Mrs. First grade thought that I forged it. I was destroyed. I had not gotten detention up until that point and I thought I did something bad. From that moment on, I decided to dedicate myself to learning everything I could about vowels. It turns out that my kindergarten teacher was more correct than my first grade teacher, but they were both wrong. Vowels aren't really letters, but the sounds they represent. They need to be in every word because, in most Western languages, you need to have some sort of vocalization behind most mouth sounds. Vocalizations. To drastically simplify a very complex discussion, our vowels and consonants are mouth sounds. If you are compelled to find out which vowel sounds correlate to which letters, the always vowels are A, E, I, and O, U, W, and Y are all sometimes vowels. In quick, wet, and yellow, they are consonants. In tube, coom, and sketchy they are vowels. Basically, W is a vowel, but pretty much only in Welsh. I knew it at the time, but my science teacher in 8th grade taught that the Big Bang Theory was the idea that the moon was formed by a collision between Earth and a Mars-sized asteroid. I told her this was not the case, and her excuse was that it was simplified so that everyone could understand it better. She'd make a great senator. First year in college, the year was 2000. My intro to Comp C professor looked at me with two heads when I asked him if the exams were open book. His response, after the shocked pause, was something along the lines of, "Do you think you'll have access to the book when you go into the real world?" It was my time to mirror his look of shock as I had just completed my second year of co-op employment through my trade school where I was employed as a DB admin and web developer and had not only books to reference but also w3school.com bookmarked in IE6. In kindergarten, the teacher's aide told us that north is always forwards no matter which direction you are facing. During recess, I figured out which way north really was and told her. Her response was, "Only if you are facing that way." Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. My junior year of high school, one of my teachers told the class that you can only get STDs from drug users and homosexuals. She also said that there are millions of baby angels in heaven looking for the right mommy and daddy to be born to. This was in 2012. Some babies make poor choices in who they want to be their parents. That means child abuse is the child's fault. The Vietnam War was a tie. That's putting it pretty generously. Went to private Christian school. The one I always got was, when you're out there in college in the real world, you need to be firm in your faith. People will challenge you left and right. Professors might try to debate you and break you down and other people will be bombarding your faith everywhere you go. Thanks for the scare tactics, but the most conflict I've had was with a classmate and it went, "Oh, you're Christian? I was raised Catholic but I'm atheist now. What did you get for number 7? That you don't have any rights in school, like, at all. No freedom of speech, no freedom of expression, nothing." This was in public school in the early 2000s. Your rights are limited, though. That if I did something that made the teacher mad, it would go on my permanent record. I remember being in a grade 10 science class and learning that everything I learned in grade 9 science was a lie. From what I understand, sciences are just one long chain of okay. It's not like that. It's actually more like this. Though we wouldn't have a calculator with us everywhere that we go. I before E except after C. That's a weird one. That the word weird is a swear word. Thanks, substitute teacher. Wikipedia is a terrible resource that is often inaccurate because literally anyone can instantly change literally any article. Wikipedia checks every edit within 24 hours. And they definitely screen new users somehow. I tried editing a small backwater page once for shoots and giggles and my edit never happened. More importantly, Wikipedia has stood up to every instance of cross-referencing that I've done, and I've written a decent number of research papers. Whenever I was told I couldn't use Wikipedia as a resource, I'd do it anyway but would click the links that Wikipedia cited, make sure the info was there in a way that I could reasonably comprehend, and would cite that instead. I had a psychology class in high school where we did a whole unit on dream interpretation, Jungian symbols and the metaphor of different events. Get to college and one psychology degree later I've been told about 15 times that Jung was too high to find his toes and is barely more credible than Freud. Dream interpretation is basically useless. You've been visited by luckiest pig in the world. Comment lucky piggy below to get some of his luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.